Museum. It's my pleasure to introduce Tova Brandt, the Albert Ravenholt Curator of the Danish-American Museum from Elkhorn, Iowa. Two reasons she's here. One, to present, and the second, she has also brought our next exhibit, which will be up next Wednesday, which is Exploring Danish Happiness. And this presentation today kind of goes along with that. So without further ado, please.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back in Luck. I was here a couple of years ago along with our museum's board of directors. We had our board meeting here a couple of years ago in June, and it was great to get to know the community better. We've been in contact with Luck for many years. We've been sending exhibits here for many years, but it was nice for our full board and many staff members to really spend a couple days here in Luck, delving into at least the Danish side of history here. And so, yes, the exhibit that we brought up for the month of July is called Exploring Danish Happiness, and it actually is designed to try to address the question of why does Denmark consistently get ranked the happiest country in the world. And the exhibit is actually developed by a Danish group, but we've been able to print the panels and make them available for venues in this country too. So this presentation tonight is about the mid-century Danish modern design period. And this is based on our exhibit of about 3 years ago, which also was traveling around. And in a shameless plug, I'll point out that we brought copies of our catalog if you are so interested. We do have those available. But this really is, if Denmark is known for anything, if you ask someone on the street, what do you think of when you think of Denmark? Probably in the top 5 answers would be, oh, Danish modern, Danish design, that look. And so we wanted to explore what is that look, where does it come from, and how did it get known in this country? How does it become a Danish-American story and just an American story too? So that's what I'll be talking about this evening. And I'm going to start out with a poem by Piet Hein, and he also drew this nice little cartoon to go with it. The English version is, "Why are the Danish craftsmen acclaimed with such worldwide cheers? Why are but few their equals, and probably none their peers? What makes the Danish modern? We practiced for 3,000 years." And I am not as pithy as Piet Hein, but what his poem suggests is that the style and era that we call Danish modern is built on a foundation of Danish culture and history. It did not appear in a vacuum. Rather, many factors came together in the middle of the 20th century to influence the design, the production, and the marketing of Danish-made furniture and housewares. And these two chairs we see on the screen, Hans Wegner's Y chair on the left and Arne Jacobsen's Ant chair on the right, epitomize two of the dominant themes of the Danish modern style. One is the appreciation of natural materials and traditional woodworking skills, and that's the Wegner chair on the left. Those are all solid wood pieces, fitted together by master craftsmen. On the right, you see new, innovative materials, experimentation with new production techniques that would have been newly available to furniture makers at the time. The chair itself, the wooden part, is a single piece of laminated wood panels, bent and curved to that shape. And then the legs are bent steel tube legs. And it came off of a factory line, not off of a craftsman's tool bench. So they are completely contemporary to one another and represent that same Danish modern period, but two very different approaches. In this presentation, we'll explore both of these themes as well as other influences on designers of the period. And then we'll also look at the American reception of Danish modern and how these pieces were introduced to Americans and received by American consumers. So we're going to start with a single individual. Sometimes a single person can have a really lasting impact and legacy. For Danish modern, Cora Klint influenced an entire generation of designers. In 1924, he was appointed the very first chair of the furniture department at the School of Architectural Design of the Royal Danish Academy of Fine Arts. So this was a job that did not exist before he had it. So he really had the opportunity to shape the furniture department of this school and how he was going to educate a new generation of designers. He pioneered what's called an anthropometric approach to furniture design, which means he collected meticulous measurements of the human body and how it interacted with all of the furniture we live with and use every day. How tall should that chair seat really be? How wide should the arms be? And what would be the average sizes for someone to feel comfortable? How wide is a dinner plate? How much room do you need to put a dinner plate in a cabinet? All of those things. And Cora Glent also believed you didn't have to reinvent the wheel, that historic furniture styles had value and had lessons that could be applied in contemporary design as well. Another factor is the Cabinet Makers Guild. It was founded in 1554 and was still a very strong force in the early 20th century. They wanted to maintain their role in the face of mass-produced furniture. They saw that the world was changing. And so they developed a strategy of annual exhibitions to highlight top achievements in design and craftsmanship. And they consciously sought ways to partner with new designers using their kind of well-established skills as cabinet makers. A similar influence and factor, it was a particular store called Den Permanente, which is short for the Danish word, which is completely the permanent exhibit of Danish arts and crafts, which was active from 1931 to 1988. And its mission was to display and sell the newest and the best, promoting a meticulous standard for design in all forms. It was basically a curated furniture store. And they would have, special openings of the newest series of chairs from Arne Jacobsen and really highlight the best. They identified what the best Danish design was. And for many years, any traveler to Copenhagen, was told, you've got to go to Den Permanente, you've got to go there. Danish designers were also very well, or one of the earliest events to really express this new Scandinavian modern design was the Stockholm exhibition of 1930. And you can see even in the poster, it's very, very modern for 1930, very Art Deco. And Gunnar Asplund was a leading designer, especially in architecture, and one of his key buildings to this day is the Stockholm Public Library, using these round, organic forms, natural materials, and it was hugely influential that designers from around the regions came together and inspired one another at this event. Danish designers are also very well aware of the German Bauhaus movement, which sought to integrate new industrial processes and materials into everyday items. So though the design look shares many similarities, Scandinavian designers maintained a loyalty to natural materials in a lot of their work. And so on the left, you see a classic German Bauhaus chair. It's using the steel tube frame, probably a synthetic woven fabric, for the seat. On the right, you see very similar lines, but all in wood. And that really kind of highlights the contrast between the German Bauhaus to the more Nordic styles. And some of the Danish designers flatly rejected the Bauhaus. Paul Henningsen was one of them. He was highly critical of the Bauhaus. He found it cold, machine-made approach to design. And he insisted that comfort and usability be the guiding principles. He was particularly known for lighting design, and the PH, which stands for Paul Henningsen, the Paul Henningsen 5 or PH5 lamp is probably his best known design. But he also designs the artichoke lamp. And this is a really good example of a lamp in which form meets function. And we see, you've heard that phrase before, form meeting function. And in my view, Danish design really is successful in balancing those two. And this lamp is a good one to pay attention to. The lamp itself is about that big around. This is not for your average living room. It may be for a really big dining room, or even for a fancy, elegant lobby or something. It's a really high-end piece of lighting. But what's remarkable about it is, first of all, it gets its name from the shape. Looks like an artichoke, right? So all of the leaves of the artichoke are basically copper sheets on the outside, and on the inside that we can't see as viewers is kind of an off-white enameled surface. So in the middle, there is a single light bulb, regular old light bulb, nothing too fancy about that. But what it does is all of those leaves reflect the light, bounces it off the enamel surfaces onto the copper and back, and so it creates this warm glow of the lighted cast. So it's a beautiful form, but it also achieves its function. At the same time, it achieves its function better than a lot of lights do. Have you ever sat at a table where there's a kind of a big kind of central lamp hanging there, and you kind of have to decide if you're going to put your face in the light and be semi-blinded or lean back in the darkness? This doesn't have that. There is nowhere where a viewer actually sees directly the light bulb. It's this beautiful, successful, piece of functionality as well in a lovely package. And if you had $10,000 to spend on a lamp, go this way. That's definitely the way to go.
I know you're not joking on that.
I'm not joking. I've priced it out. So we also see examples of historic inspiration. And so I've got a couple kind of Hans Wegner chair on the left called the peacock chair because of the shape of all of those slats or slat. But clearly inspired by Windsor chairs, which are so familiar to us, and have been, for the last 300 years. We've been sitting in what we just loosely term Windsor chairs. So now in the historic period, Windsor chairs are basically office chairs. This is what a clerk would sit at. This is what you would sit at a desk. And so they're kind of upright. It's hard to relax. The peacock chair sits a little shorter, leans back a little more, is a little more generous in its proportions. It's a lounging chair. It's a relaxing chair. And so he's clearly taken the stylistic inspiration from the historic models, but made it a more welcoming, a pleasant place to spend time. Another Hans Wegner chair on the left called the Chinese chair, and on the right, a true Chinese chair from the 17th century. And you can see some of the design elements are very clearly inspired from this type of historic chair. There's a solid back splat in the back with just a little bit of curve to match the curvature of your spine. This piece, oh right, I have a pointer somewhere. This piece is a single curving line from the back to the arms, and that's picked up here as well, with just a couple very minimalistic, elegant arm supports there. Here we have kind of a carved skirt right here. And Wegner, every time he did a chair, the next one was just a little bit different, and just he continually experimented. And a quote from his, "I tried to strip the old chair of their outer styles and let them appear in their pure construction. It was rather a continuous process of purification." That's how he himself sees kind of his approach to designing furniture. Furniture design of the period wasn't just a conversation between the present and the past, or between craftsman and designer, modern art, especially Cubism, also had an influence. The Danish designer Finn Juhl, and on the right you see his own home with his furniture, that's his chair, that's his sofa design. He was an avid collector of the Swedish artist Wilhelm Lundström, Danish artist, I'm sorry, Lundström, anybody know? Not quite sure. Scandinavian artist Wilhelm Lundström.
I think it's Norwegian, the way they always crossed.
Scandinavian it is. Yes, and so the round lines, the kind of minimalist but still very kind of clear representation of forms that we see in the still life there, that fit with the aesthetic of these designers. Very influential at the time across Europe and throughout the Western world was Henri Matisse. And so a lot of people were aware of his work and his cutouts, and he did a lot of art in this kind of cutout style. I see a connection between the use of negative space in the chair on the left, but which certainly has a function in how they were able to curve the back piece of wood, but it yet introduces this design element in the negative space, much like Matisse's use of just bold, single color and negative space on the paper too. So Matisse was still very active and very influential in artists and designers of the mid-century. In the case of this gentleman, Arne Jacobsen, he always referred to himself as an architect, not as a designer. However, he designed every detail of his buildings, down to the cutlery. On the right, you see pictures of what's called the Oxford series, which was furniture designed for the buildings that he did for St. Catherine's College in 1963. And he's best known for the SAS Royal Hotel in Copenhagen, for which he designed the egg chair, the swan chair, and cutlery you see on the bottom picture there that would be seen on the big screen in the movie 2001: Space Odyssey. It was seen as so modern, so futuristic that they incorporated into the set design. Jacobsen really embraced the opportunities that new materials and production methods offered. His ant chair, which we saw in one of the earlier slides, was among the first to use steel tube legs and bent wood techniques for a stackable chair. And this was very appropriate for people who were moving into smaller urban housing, apartment housing, and needed the flexibility that smaller and stackable furniture offered. The ant chair had a fatal design flaw. It had 3 legs. So anyone who was a little taller tended to fall over. Jacobsen flatly refused to redesign it in his lifetime, but he did design the 7 chair after the ant. And you'll note that he put 4 legs on the 7 chair. The 7, in case you're wondering where the 7 comes from, here's the 7. See it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That becomes the best-selling Danish chair of all time. It is still in production, over 5 million chairs later. If there is any cafeteria in Denmark, they use that chair. And so, an important thing to remember is that these pieces of furniture were not intended for just the elite members of society. They were truly intended for use by average people in average homes. And that was part of the kind of democratic ideals and social democratic values that Denmark was really embracing, especially in the mid-20th century. And so, that also included just the idea that good design could make your life better for all ages. So these are clippings from the Bo Bedre, which means live better, and that was kind of the magazine, would be the equivalent of Better Homes and Gardens. They published what they called the Idea Book. And the Idea Book had all these suggestions. For example, do you have a messy toddler at home? Just suspend a roll of paper towels right at the table. So it's easy to grab right there, no problem. several suggestions of what to do with wet umbrellas, wet galoshes, you know, because it's Denmark. This is going to be a chronic issue to deal with. So the idea book is filled with ideas of just how design can make your life better. And it's not just for grown-ups. Kai Boyesen becomes a specialist in designing toys. And these become beloved toys. The soldiers with moving parts, they're all wooden, posable wooden elephants. And most of all, his best known is the monkey. And the monkey is so well known, and you can see that its hands are curved, so you can actually suspend the monkey off a shelf. He can hang there, he balances wonderfully. And don't worry, if the kind of elastic joints in your monkey have dried up and broken, you can order, even now, replacement joint parts for your monkey. Danish designers were also participants in the global design arena. Among the many Scandinavian designers and artists who were involved in the brand new United Nations headquarters in New York, Finn Juhl received the commission to design what was called the UN Trusteeship Council Chamber. And that's what's pictured on the left. Other works included the use of Wegener's peacock chairs in the lounge areas, and all of this was publicized in a major spread in Life magazine. So not a lot of people went into the UN Trusteeship Council Chamber, but a lot of people read Life magazine, and that was one of the ways that people started seeing this look and how it was applied. And here's another good example of Danish design on the global stage. It was a Danish architect, Jørgen Utzon, who won the design competition for the Sydney Opera House. And that was a pretty major, globally known project. So for American consumers, Danish Modern came to represent good taste and good quality. After all, the United Nations was choosing this stuff. And you know, this quote, "No doubt, just like everyone else, you like modern Danish furniture. Your home needs Anton Dam's modern Danish furniture. It will be admired by all of your friends." This is the claim on a catalog that was printed in 1964 and had a whole price list in US dollars. Now, 1964, through the 50s and the 60s, there's still a lot of U.S. Service people stationed in German bases, and you know that's not too far away from Denmark. And so that becomes one initial American consumer base for Danish furniture makers, is the Americans stationed in Europe. So catalogs like the Anton Dam furniture catalog, you know, gets sent and distributed initially among U.S. military bases, but the price list is in dollars, and they promise they will ship things anywhere in the world. So, how did this admiration by all your friends happen? Initially, in some part through museum exhibits. Museum exhibit as marketing tool. There was a Design in Scandinavia exhibit that traveled through major U.S. art museums in 1954. It had an accompanying catalog, and it was a combination of all of the Nordic countries. So it really presented this Scandinavian design aesthetic. The follow-up was The Art of Denmark, Viking to Modern in 1960, and that also toured major U.S. cities through major art museums. Furniture makers in America started partnering with Danish designers and started promoting that fact as a good thing, as something that really set them apart. So here you have Baker Modern on the left, original sketch by Finn Juhl. They're really marketing the fact that they've got Finn Juhl designing a line of their chairs. On the right, you can see Lounge Chair by Hans Wegener, George Tannier Inc. You know, so a New York-based furniture company is really using Hans Wegener to reach an audience. Dansk, how many of you have Dansk kitchenwares in your home? That was actually a brainchild of an American businessman who then went to Denmark to recruit Danish designers and found that he only needed one guy. He only needed Jens Quistgaard, who became a prolific designer for the Dansk company, which, because it was an American company, is much better known in the US than it is in Denmark. But all of these really well-known designs, like the enameled casserole dishes, and things like this line of extravagant pepper mills made out of exotic woods, which themselves are their own niche collector's market. Who knew? What really brought Danish design into American living rooms is the very first televised presidential debate, Kennedy and Nixon in 1960. About half of the American population heard it on the radio, the other half watched it on TV for the first time. And look at the chairs they're sitting in. And well, if it's good enough for presidential candidates, it must be good stuff. In fact, that chair, Hans Wegner's round chair, becomes so well known and so admired, it just becomes known as the chair. And it literally, if you do a Google search and just look for the chair, that's what comes up. Post-war immigrants from Denmark often brought pieces with them to furnish their new homes. Or they would seek examples to purchase in the US. And so here we have an example of a living room, Danish modern pieces living side by side with family heirlooms. For post-war immigrants who were living in Denmark as this design world was really growing and developing, this was a way to bring a piece of Denmark with them to new lives in the United States. And for others, some Danish-Americans select Danish modern design for their home as a way to connect with heritage. It's an alternative to the Christmas plates on the wall. You can have, this Danish modern table setting with a Paul Henningsen lamp, or at least a knockoff of a Paul Henningsen lamp. I know the lamp. I know it's a knockoff. The owner has told me. He's my boss, so yeah. That look becomes a way to connect with heritage. And sorry, the picture's a little fuzzy, but you can see, very typical living room, except for the red egg chair that this gentleman is sitting in on the left. You also see Danish design in the movies. The very first James Bond movie, Dr. No, 1963. He's walking through this nice little happy hour, and that woman is sitting in a Finn chair. Similarly, as I always mentioned, 2001 Space Odyssey, they're using the Arne Jacobsen cutlery for their life in the stars, I guess. And other examples of pop culture, of mystery series, The Cat Who, fill in the blank, a huge series of mystery novels, and one of them is The Cat Who Ate Danish Modern. I haven't read it. Anybody read this book? But here, the role and the iconic nature of some of these designers gets so well known that here's a full-page magazine ad for the furniture company Knoll, and all it is Hans Wegner's face, and you can just barely make out the peacock chair behind him. So Hans Wegner is selling this style and this furniture for the company. As the designers don't just stop at wooden chairs or even with steel tube legs, they continue to experiment, and the 20th century provides so many new materials, so many new production techniques. Some of them get a little off the wall. So here you have on the left, actually both of these are Werner Panton, and he's always thinking of, like, what could I do with a big roll of wire cable, and if we just spin it into a big cone, can you make a chair? Yes, you can. What do you know? What can you do with just one piece of molded plastic? And you've got to get the plastic just right, because it has to be rigid enough to not break, but it has to bend a little bit enough, and it has to have the strength and all of that. And it actually took several years for the plastic capability to match his design vision to finally be able to make this, the Panton chair, which I think looks like a sleek evening gown with, fishtail hem. And Paul Cherholm, another very innovative designer who experiments also with mixing materials and new materials. And the quote from him is, "I am trying to express the very language of the materials themselves." Well, it does look like a pretty good lounge chair, so I'll give him good points for that. You also have a good element of whimsy in this period. And when we just look at the furniture, when we just look at the chairs, you see a lot of wood, you see a lot of steel, and you kind of get the sense of a palette that's just grays and browns. But what you don't see in kind of putting these things together is the textiles of the period. Very colorful, very bright palettes. You know, the hand weaving tradition experiences a revival. And in the ceramics, especially decorative ceramics, that's where you can really add, you know, splashes of color and life and whimsy. Bjorn Wienblad is one of the designers who really epitomizes this idea of creative whimsy and just having fun with something. I've never seen anything dark from Bjorn Wienblad. His designs create this world populated with round, smiling, timeless figures, and the colors and exuberance of his work makes them uniquely his own. He excelled as a ceramic artist, but was also very well known for poster art and textile design and theater design as well. And that's going to be our next exhibit at the museum. So if you come after Thanksgiving, you'll see a whole exhibit dedicated to Bjorn Wienblad. We are looking forward to it. So the lasting legacy, one example is the Chieftain's Chair. In 2012, the Danish Design Award for Classics was awarded to Finnul's Chieftain's Chair. And in announcing the selection, this is what they explained, the Danish Design Center explained. When it was presented in 1949, the Chieftain's Chair marked a renewal of Danish furniture design with inspiration from contemporary art, and with its organic shapes, the chair's form, construction, and choice of materials broke free from strict functionalism and the contemporary Danish furniture tradition. Today, 63 years after it was created, it stands as one of the most important exponents of the term Danish Modern. And here's another way you know if something has reached iconic status. Do they make miniatures? These are collectible miniature Arniakism chairs. The swan, the seven, the ant, and the egg, all made in a 1:6 precise scale model with the correct materials used in the full-size original. The full-size ones are still in production. You can get them with different fabrics. You can get them in leather. You can get them in stripes. But the fact that there is also, you know, a market for miniatures, that's when you know you've reached, you know, iconic status. And so, are we at iconic status? I'm not sure. I actually wanted to make a few more comments. All right, that was the last of the design slide. Okay. If you page through contemporary Danish furniture catalogs or magazines about Danish interiors, you will see these chairs side by side with the things being designed and made right now. They continue to be the sign of quality and good taste for Denmark, as well as through many of our cultures. And in our exhibit, we wanted to ask, what is the lasting legacy of this? Since there's still designers who are trying to come up with new ideas, trying to innovate still, and is there such a thing as Danish design? How do you continue to define that? One of the contemporary designers, Mads Odgaard, who was born in 1960, so he was definitely not part of this generation. He responds to this question in this way. I used to think that the concept of Danish design would ebb. After all, we can't go on living off our fine traditions. But I was wrong. We live in this tradition, and there are so many good people maintaining them and who want to do better every time. So the concept of Danish design will continue. So that's one contemporary designer's take on, does this truly still live on as a living legacy? So Most of the pieces and pictures I've shared today are in our catalog. The exhibit has finished its itinerary, so I can't direct you to Davenport, Iowa, or Seattle, Washington to see it. It was a lot of fun to send it on the road, but now we've moved on to other projects. And if, for those of you who have been here, you recognize our building, that is the Museum of Danish-America in Elkhorn. We enjoy a 35-acre property surrounded by a work-in-progress prairie restoration project. And just to show you what the types of projects or exhibits that we currently have, Sport for Sport's Sake is our major exhibit this year. We're featuring the art by Gert Mathisen, who was a Danish immigrant to the New York City area. And coming soon, The Whimsical World of Bjorn Wienblad. So that will also be a traveling exhibition. If you know of any art museums or other museums in this region who might be interested, let me know. That's all I have for now, unless you have questions of me on this or those or, or the museum itself. I want to thank you very much.
Yeah.
Very much. Yes.
In 1970, we ordered a dining room table, and it was made in Denmark, and it was imported through a company called, I think, Brown and Saltzman, if I'm not mistaken. And we took some pictures of it. Could you tell us anything more
I don't know.
about it? It's a Parsons table. It's a true Parsons, solid walnut. It's got two 19-inch leaves. The table is 44 inches square.
I can tell you, it's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very well built, and we've used it continuously since 1970.
I mean, tables are almost the most difficult thing to identify by maker because there's only so much, design detail you can do at the table. There are a lot of catalogs that, that one could look at to see, this formation, these mitered corners, you can identify who designed it, all of that. So I don't know offhand, but it might be possible to kind of attribute a designer to that. I think you point out another great aspect of this Danish modern furniture is that it was made to last a lifetime. And it's so far removed from IKEA. I do not expect my IKEA shelves to be bequeathed to my descendants in any way.
And they weren't designed as such.
And they weren't designed as such. No. But it's an interesting thing. I have heard stories of Danish families. Of course, if you had needs, you could go out and buy. We're going to furnish our dining room, so we're going to go and buy the table and 6 chairs. But even for those who were, maybe just had a blue-collar income, you buy a chair this month. And in a couple months, you buy another chair, knowing that this is an investment, furniture that you will live with for the rest of your life, and that is truly worth the investment, and you would have confidence in that, in the craftsmanship and the materials. And that's a kind of a different paradigm from how most of us would go out and buy a sofa today. So I wish I could spot off, tell you more about the table. I think it's a great example of the period.
Is there any way we could try to do research and talk to other furniture experts, and nobody's been able to give us any kind of a clue? All I remember is that we ordered it through a furniture store in Minneapolis, and it took 4 months.
Are they still in business?
No.
But there is a store in Minneapolis called Danish Teak Classics. Have you encountered them at all? They're in North Minneapolis, and what the owner did in starting up this business is he goes over to Denmark and basically buys mid-century furniture on garage sales. Ones that have the finish is worn off and they need some repair. He fills a container, ships it back, and he has a staff of furniture restorers right there, on site. And so they restore the stuff and then they sell it in their showrooms. So he's he has the best eye I know in being able to pick out, you know, and really identify who made these different things, and whether it's a true example or if it's somebody's knockoff, or you know, it's not quite the top end example, but it's still really good stuff. So that's been his business model. You know, get the garage sale stuff in Denmark and bring it back here and fix it
That's
up.
actually an excellent suggestion, because I didn't realize that there still was Danish furniture store in there.
What's his name again, or the company's name?
The company name is Danish Teak Classics. And
TEAK.
yep,
Teak is in teak wood.
yep, yeah, exactly.
Where is it?
It's in North Minneapolis, kind of just not far north of downtown. It's in an old seed company building, seed factory, which I can't remember. But DanishTeakClassics.com has both, you know, their contact information and their location, but also kind of a visual catalog of many of the pieces they have in their showroom. And just walking through their showroom is just a fun, you know, kind of education, immersion into the style of this period. So he might be able to just look at that picture and say, oh yeah, that looks like X, Y, Z.
Well, when you were in New Orleans earlier this year, we went into kind of an upscale antique furniture store, and that guy knew about Donald Salson, and couldn't identify him. I didn't have a picture of it either.
Yeah.
He said they were quite valuable. He paid $300 for it.
I'm sure it's worth more than that.
I could tell you as a furniture guy that if you look up any Danish furniture guild or a woodworkers guild based upon the Danish idea right there, you'll find that. There's so much of a subculture of people that were influenced by what your presentation was about, by these crates, that there were just so many of them that really never gained national recognition, but still followed in the influence. And there's the miters I can see right in here. They're very particular. Somebody did something very interesting. I can show it to you if you want, how they built these legs and this apron all the way around. And that would be very recognizable to somebody in the guild, in a Danish, like a woodworkers guild. They know right away.
Yeah, I mean, I agree entirely that for a table, it is much more distinct than most tables.
Yeah,
It's just how it's.
It's like a
this
signature.
apron here,
Yeah.
see how
It's
the
like a
miter
signature.
there? Now there's a back miter there from the leg.
That's
And
when
then
you're talking
the top
about
apron is
the
miter.
Wagner
This
chairs.
is all jointed
I-
together. This is all one.
Just
This
almost
piece,
squeezing my
this
stomach.
piece,
My mother
and
had
then the
one.
top
Yeah.
is set down into a
Rid
table
of
that
her
runs
things.
along.
The Wagner chair,
You can see
it was just like,
That's pretty unique. You
there was
don't
no way
see
you
that.
could bring it to do that.
Right.
You just don't, people wouldn't do it.
And
There are many ways to join those things
Excellent
together, but
tradition.
that's
I know,
really,
the Danish furniture.
Oh,
Yes, it comes
Work
with
with that.
it, but also the difference between, I think, the way the furniture is made and what we have as Americans. There was a different concept. You bought one piece at a time. You
Yeah.
didn't buy a whole house full of things. It took a lifetime to acquire it.
Right?
No,
Yeah.
Daryl,
You
that
also
is,
didn't change it every 3 years.
That's right.
that's such a nice piece.
That's part of why Danish Modern began to decline in popularity, because there was never any entity to kind of protect that brand. It wasn't a trademark. You know, it was just a term that people used and applied to a certain look. And so you started to get, you know, especially in the 70s, you know, different companies, you know, pop up, you know, like the Happy Viking Furniture Store. And, you know, there was no guarantee that it was actually true Scandinavian design or true Scandinavian craftsmanship or quality standards, because there wasn't a body to kind of protect that brand. And so it, you know, both tastes changed, and also they were kind of undercut by their own success, because other places, even in Denmark, my boss's lamp over his dining room table, they got that in Denmark. But, you know, you would go to Den Permanente to see what was the cool stuff, and then you'd go to the store, you know, a few streets down, where they sold kind of the knockoffs, you know, and you could get this kind of close to the same thing, not trying to be exact, but close enough especially for stupid Americans, to get something, much more affordable. So you might be sacrificing on quality, and you might be sacrificing on being able to say, yes, that is designed by this person. But if you're going for the look, that was an option. So it was, in some ways, the Danish modern style was a victim of just kind of the natural evolution of tastes, but also a victim of its own success because it attracted other competition. But the real stuff endures. And continues to inspire now kind of an increased interest. When we opened this show in our museum, it coincided with the season opening of the show Mad Men. And so, you can just imagine that, the fans of Mad Men, include a new generation kind of falling in love with 1960s design and style. And so there is a cyclical interest in mid-century design right now.
Well, we bought some Danish design teakwood cabinets, basically. They're freestanding. They said we're Danish design, but they said teak is, clearly back from Thailand and all that area. So they said the Danes moved their factory over there to build it rather than import the lumber to build it over here.
That would make sense, and then they have much lower labor costs as well. Yeah.
And they held up very well too. And some of it's mostly solid teak, but there are some veneers on some of the pieces, but the veneers are staying well and falling apart.
Yeah. Considering the climate extremes that we live in the Midwest, it's an impressive testament to the quality of the craftsmanship. All right. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for your questions.
Thank you so much. For anybody who's interested, yes, you do have books for sale.
We do have books. Yeah, Danish Modern, and our more recent exhibit, Skål, Scandinavian Spirits. It's a cultural history of beer and aquavit.
The books for us tonight are a special price, so if you are thinking about it, it's well worth your while. Anybody interested in coffee and homemade banana bread, please help yourself. And before you leave, I ask that you please sign our guest book. It's important to us, and we're very pleased that you're here tonight. Thank you.